So morning everyone, my name's Bethan Perkins. I'm one of the DAFNI development team and I'm going to give you an introduction to the part of the DAFNI platform, and then I'll hand over to Tom Gowland who will show you another side to the platform. So the DAFNI platform login page is here. I'm going to log in today as a kind of demo user that we have for these sort of events. A thing to note is that there is no register button. So if you want an account, as Brian just mentioned, then do get in touch with us and we can arrange that for you. So if I log in as this non-administrative user, this is an equivalent account to the sort of standard DAFNI account that everyone receives when they arrive on the platform. Then when we arrive at the home screen, you'll see there are four kind of key areas. So data, models, workflows, and the management of assets. I'm going to cover data and management of assets, and then I'll pass over to Tom who'll look at models and workflows. So if we have a look at the data catalog, as you can see, there are currently 487 data sets available to this user on the DAFNI platform. There are in fact more like 900 data sets which are available on the platform, but the majority of those at this point are private data sets. So by default, everything that you create as a data set is private to you and is not visible to other users on the platform. So for this user, we can see there are some previous test data sets. As I've said, we've used this at other events as well. And you can also filter down through these data sets. So for example, if you wanted to find out what Newcastle University had published recently, then you could filter through that. We also support subjects and filtering through subjects. So which data sets do Newcastle University publish which related to oceans, and you can narrow in your search in that way. We also provide a similar thing for formats down here, and of course like a free text search and a date range search as well. If you're looking for a particular study area, a particular study time, then you can use the date range search, and in time I think we'll also add in searching for an area. So I'm going to walk us quickly through adding a data set. So these data sets that we have on the platform are at the moment largely driven by the community that we have on the platform. So there are some sets of data. So the Office of National Statistics, for example, is an example of a data set which we as the DAFNI team have curated, but the majority of data sets are driven by our users. And so we do encourage people to add their data and share their data with others on the platform. Adding data is quite simple. So we request that users drop your data so you can browse, or simply drop some files into this widget here, and you can see your files there. You can upload anything through this, so there is no kind of restriction on file type or file size. In terms of file size, it's worth bearing in mind that this is all uploaded. So if you put in an enormous file, then it will take a very, very long time to upload. If you do have enormous files that you would like or to see on the DAFNI platform, then contact us directly and we can manage that for you through the back end of the system. So once you have your files staged for upload, then you give them a title. So we'll go with, for example, and then a description. I'm just putting down something quick here, but generally the more information that you can give in this description, then the more discoverable your data will be on the platform. If you have a DOI for your data, you can enter that in here. We do request that you provide a subject for your data. This is part of the search that I showed earlier. So let's say ours relates to boundaries, for example, and I will put in a DOI, one I made earlier, for showing later. We support themes. So these are from an Inspire list of spatial data themes. And this again, just to improve searchability on the platform, I've just picked a couple at random there. The subject and themes we may well be updating in response to the Ontologies Championship, actually, which was mentioned earlier, to a more expansive vocabulary in time. Language, we have the main British Isles languages at the top here, and then anything else if you're working with people in another country, and then any keywords. So let's go with test. If you have a standard which your data conforms to, which you'd like to record as part of the metadata around that data set, then you can add that in here. So there's a URL and a label to go with that URL. This section is on dataset coverage. So this is the extent of the data inside your dataset, for example, not necessarily where you're based or when the dataset was created, but the data itself and what you're publishing. So we've made applying the spatial coverage hopefully fairly straightforward using GeoNames, a well-known library of geographical references. And so let's take, for example, Southampton. Type that in here, pick the one in the United Kingdom rather than in Bermuda. And then you see we zoom in and that bounding box is then applied to the data. And let's say our data set covered some sensor data in Southampton in the last month. This section here is about dataset ownership. So we're very keen that DAFNI doesn't become just another silo of data and that we are able to link to the outside world. So that's what this section is about here. So here we define the organization that created the data. We'll say it's DAFNI and provide an identifier. For that, we can add any individual users onto individual contributors, into that as well, if there are any particular people who you want to shout out about the data set. The date that the data set was created, so let's say ours was finished shortly after the month. If you wanted to put in an update frequency, if this is something which is likely to be updated on a regular basis, you can add that in here. If you have any intermediary publication of the data set, so for example, something like data.gov, your data set is also up there as well. Or if there are any other libraries that you would like to connect to as part of this data set, then you can add that in here. And then finally, we request a contact name and email. So that users have a human being that they can come to at the end of all of this and ask questions of the data set. Finally, we request, we mandate that you provide a license with your data set. This license isn't interpreted automatically by the platform at this point, but that is something which is on the kind of the longer term view for where we'll go with data sets. We suggest the use of CC by 4 as a default, but you can change that if you would like to. So for example, I've got a link to an MIT license here, so I can put that in instead. If you'd like to declare any rights, which is fairly typical of government data sets, then you can put that in here. And then finally, there's a version message right at the bottom here. So this is to allow, once you've uploaded your data set, you'll see that you can then edit it. So you can then create another version of your data set. And we do keep a version history of your data. And to support that, then we put some version messages. But for the very first one, we suggest an initial version message to kind of keep things simple after everyone's been through all this metadata. Finally, read and accept. DAFNI terms and conditions. Double check that all of the files that you wanted to upload are indeed in the staging area for upload, and then publish. Okay, so I had 2 small files, so they were very quick to do. Okay, excellent. And we seem to have taking a while to come through for some reason, so I'll show one that we did earlier. So here you can see once your data set has been uploaded, then we create this nice page for each data set, which again, so the contact point of contact there is very prominently placed, and the map, this particular one was for Birmingham, so we can see the spatial extent of that data very easily. To download the data files, then you come to this area here, and it's simply a question of clicking on them and downloading them onto the platform. And the additional metadata that was provided as well will all be here. This wasn't completely filled in at the time of creation, but these would all be filled in. At the top right-hand corner here, we've got quite an important section. So the license information that was provided is reported again, so you can find it. But on creation of the data set, then these 2 IDs are minted. So a dataset ID and a dataset version ID. And as Tom will show you later on, these are used when you want to use this dataset in a model. As I mentioned, you can edit the dataset. So you can add new files to create a new version, or you can tweak the metadata if you want to change something, or in fact, you can delete that particular version if you would like to, or you can delete the entire dataset as the owner of that dataset. So let's see if it's come through. No, okay, so I think we're going to have to use the test data for digital twins. So what I wanted to show you next is that when you upload data to the platform, it's generally hidden. So what I'm going to do is I'm moving to a new tab here, and I'm going to log in as a second non-administrative user. So we can look at the data catalog from the point of view of this user. And those test data sets that are in the previous view aren't visible at the top here. So what we do is create a group which brings together those two users, and you can use this to form a collaboration with your research colleagues. If you're part of a project, for example, then you can have a group for that project. That's the way that we've done things in the past. So here we have a demo group, which we use for providing demos, and you can already see non-administrative user 2 is already a member of this group. If I wanted to add another user, then it would be a question of typing in. So I could use the this account here, for example, and add this user with a role of, say, viewer. And they will also be part of that group. So what I'm going to do now is add a data set. We can add data set and we can add models to groups. And this is one of the nicest ways of sharing data with your colleagues on the platform. So if we take this data set here, set the permissions, view and read is adequate. Add that to the group. Then if we switch over, so now all of these users have view permissions on that data set. So if we switch back over to our non-admin 2 user, our new user, then we should see that that data set that we've just shared is now available to that user. So that's really to show that, again, when you upload data to the platform, then it is private to you unless you choose to share it. The other way of sharing is to make the data set completely public. And that's on this page here. And so we could manage that data set, for example, and say that it's visible, view only, or full access. And if it's full access, then everybody on the platform will have access to that data set and to the metadata and to the data set itself. View only gives you access just to the metadata. And I think I'll stop there. Thanks very much. I think we'll take questions towards the end.